Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon. Let's see.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Hey, Donna Gibbons.
Hello.
Beautiful.
How are you?
Hello.
Congratulations on your annual meeting, and bravo for having it virtually.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to you bringing the fire, waking us up today.
Well, you have a plenty of fire, and I thank you for leading the Eastside Community Network so brilliantly down through the years. It's a blessing that you're in our community. You could be anywhere, but you're right here in Detroit.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored. So we're joined here by our board president, Charles Walker, our board chair, rather. I'm not giving away my job. Charles Walker.
Hi, Charles Walker. How are you?
I'm good, Joanne. I don't know if you remember me or not. I used to own the Save-A-Lot on Connors and Warren.
I do. As a matter of fact, I live on the west side. I came all the way on the east side just to shop at your supermarket.
Right. I remember that. And I used to work at Foodland too years back. Used to come in there shopping.
I did, Grand River and Finkel.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your investment in our community.
All right. Appreciate you also.
But that's what it makes sense to invest in each other, support each other, patronize each other. That's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
How you doing, Joanne?
Oh, hey, baby. How are you, my baby?
I'm great. It's good to see you.
I know you're a grown woman, but you're still a baby to me.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, Charles.
Hey, what's going on, Andrew? You all right?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I hadn't seen you in a while.
We're not in the office. Come through. Coming through virtually now.
There you go. Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hey, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Hey.
I remember when Angela was a teenager running around being a revolutionary.
A long time ago. Joanne always had my back, though. I appreciate that.
And when that baby was on fire, we just had to stand back and let her go. I love it.
So we are in the practice mode. I can let you know that State Senator Chang is still in Lansing, trying to offset what Whitsett is trying to do up there and trying to make sure that the governor has the full authority to protect the people of our state. So she is going to be calling in, but she is not going to be physically present until, yeah.
I understand what she has to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, well, one of us is physically present. I should say she's not going to be able to video conference with us.
I understand.
Mm-hmm. So we have with us our Director of Youth Programs up on the left, Tanya Aho. And let's see, Ian McCain, who is our Business Development Manager. I'm not good with titles. Holly Benford, who is our Finance Director. Camille, who is our Interim Development Officer. Savannah, who is connecting to audio. But she is our Director of Community Outreach and Planning, and Ricky Ackerman, who is our Climate Equity Director. So
good.
Great staff. And Camille, what are we supposed to be doing now?
Okay, so I just wanted us to have a chance to kind of go over the presentation and the order of the run of show before we get started. So yesterday I sent out the annotated agenda to everyone that's going to be presenting. And that basically breaks down the order that we're going to present the annual report and updates in. So right now, the order I have, because I've changed it a little bit as I was making the presentation, we have Donna going first, reading the letter from the president and CEO. Next will be Holly doing the finance report. Savannah does the COP report after that. After that, we have, let me actually go to the actual thing. We're gonna have Ricky doing climate equity. After Ricky, Tanya will do the youth development report. After Tanya, Ian is going to present the Mack Avenue Business Development Report. After Ian presents that report, I will present the, what I'm calling kind of like special events and community engagement report. And then Angela will do kind of the consolidated ECN response to COVID update. And at the end, I'm going to add one last kind of like intro slide, but to kind of tie up everything we're doing. Savannah's going to read her 10-year leap anniversary poem, because I thought it would be a nice way to kind of celebrate and pull everything that we're presenting together.
Since it's the annual meeting going first, probably we do need Charles Walker to open the meeting and welcome everybody. And then I will go over my letter. So why don't we do the welcome and call to order, and then go in with me. And then after that presentation, then he will then open up the board vote. Although I think he's going to have to defer to Sonia Dotson, because his seat is, we have to vote on him, or the committee has to vote on him, and we need to make sure that he gets the votes. That's a joke. But we have, I think, 6 board seats that are up for renewal. And so we're going to read off those names and just ask for people to somehow indicate their support for them being reinstated as board members. Usually at the board meeting, we do aye, and everybody goes with it. But since we can't do it that way, I think we're going to have some other way of show of hands. Anybody who's on the webcast can go into their speaker, their chat, and click the thumbs up, correct? Or just type in yes.
Yeah, they'll have to type in a minute.
Okay.
What about for those calling in on the phone?
There's no real way for them to do that, but it's really a formality. There's never been anybody who has said no. So I think we're going to be okay with that.
Good.
Wait, you mean in terms of raising hands? You can raise your hand from the phone, because Tyson Gersh kept doing it at the first.
Okay, so how do you do that?
I don't know, but I know that he found out the way, so I'll try to look it up once we get started.
Okay.
So after our presentations, do we pivot to the next person, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just like a simple, and now we'll have Savannah presenting our COP department report.
Okay.
And I restated that the person who's speaking is going to be the person that we see.
Yes, it'll be set up for speaker view.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Who was after me? Camille, I'm sorry.
Ricky's after you.
Ricky, okay.
Don't mess my name up, Savannah.
Now, after me is Senator Chang. So who's it? Are you introducing her, Donna, or am I introducing her?
No, tell me.
Is that how it is going, Camille?
Well, that's how the slides go.
No, so after you will be the Savannah. So I just updated. There's an additional slide there now after you, which will be Savannah doing the 10-year anniversary poem, and then we will hand off to Charles for the board elections.
Okay, so I introduced Savannah. Okay.
All right.
And then Donna will introduce all of the speakers.
Okay. And you sent me the bios, the updated bios, or is it already updated in?
There's only one updated bio for Dr. Watson, and I'm going to send it over now.
All right. Okay.
So if you want to raise your hand, if you go to participants, you click on that. Then at the bottom it says invite, mute, or raise hand.
Mine doesn't say that. Oh, yeah, I see it. It says, mine says invite, mute, unmute, more. And it says, yes, it says allow attendees to raise hand and to view the participant count. I can't see it because I'm a co-host, so that's not a vision I can see. Okay.
Hey, Camille?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice this before. You might want to adjust the color on slide 36, the community Q&A with the instruction. It's hard to see.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn my screen off and I'll be right back.
All right, so there's a floor debate happening now. So she's saying she'll join us late, hopefully. So should we have a couple minutes, just roll through it so people can see it. Just present that out. I think, can you present from here? Share screen. I think I'll share the screen so you guys can see it.
You got it?
Yeah. Let me see. I guess I should have done the slideshow, right?
Just hit present at the top, at the right.
Let's see it.
All the way over, all the way. Keep going.
I have to move this. That's the issue. Okay. Okay, there we go. So this is the first slide. This is the agenda.
Hey, Dylan.
These are the staff. The staff are from last year and our board members. Those are Holly's slides, and then we're going to thank our funders. I think Camille's going to do that. Then we have community organizing and planning, highlights, climate equity, youth development, Mack Avenue, and our events and community engagement report. And then Authentically Detroit. And this is Angela's right here. Okay. That look good to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, to me.
All right.
So, Donna, you mentioned Camille would thank our funders.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I moved it up to the finance report after going through the previous annual
so Holly's
report.
going to do it?
Holly can do it, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Okay. So we want to go live right at 6.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
We got 2 minutes.
So we don't have to wait until everybody get into their seats. Settled in.
No. No, we do not. So how do we?
So I'm gonna go ahead and start the broadcast so that I can cast it to Facebook.
Okay.
All right, another question. Are you going to record it?
Yes, it's recording now.
Okay.
We are now broadcasting.
Okay.
Orlando.
Orlando. So,
Hi.
hi. I want
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Orlando.
And our callers, our attendees are gathering. We have so far 28 participants, 18 attendees. So I want to say hi to all the attendees. It's interesting not being able to connect with you directly, but we appreciate you being here. And with that, are we going to start with Charles opening?
All right, that's great. I'd like to say welcome, as they used to say when we was in church, the poem, welcome, welcome, welcome. You know, that's what I do as a kid. I'd like to say you could be anywhere doing anything, but you happen to spend some time with the Eastside Community Network, 36th Annual Meeting. I would like to say we appreciate you spending time with us. It's going to be a good evening. We're going to talk about a lot of different things and give you some information and some excitement. We have some great speakers that's going to be with us tonight, and it's going to be really exciting. You know, Eastside Community Network has a long history of working on the Eastside, doing positive things, and I'm really glad to be a part. So my name is Charles Walker. I didn't say that. You know, I'm the board chair of Eastside Community Network. And just want to say we really appreciate the community and being part of the community, and nothing really happens positive in the community unless the community gets involved. And so we're the check and balances of what happens in the city. So it's glad for us to be a part. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Donna.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you. This is a very difficult time for most of us. I think everybody knows somebody who has lost their lives, somebody who is not, I think it kind of surprised us the way that COVID-19 hit our community. Nobody that I know of really expected Detroit to be the epicenter of the United States or the state of Michigan. One of the international hotspots right now, and everybody's looking at us. We have a higher rate of COVID-19 than just about anywhere in the nation. And I think we all know how problematic that is, actually how tragic that is to lose people at this rate. Robert Young is on our board. He's our board treasurer. He's at the meeting as a participant, but he's not able to speak now. But I know that Robert and his flock has been at the hospital, at Henry Ford Hospital, dealing with so much death and dying, and there's a great deal of stress on everybody. So I want to commend people who have given their lives really for us, and who are, spending so much time. When we look at our work as community development, our community development used to be really seen as housing development and commercial development and sometimes people development. But as we move forward, as we look at what's happening, not only with this pandemic, but also our climate, we have to really look at community resilience. How well do we as a community weather crises like that? And it's pretty clear from looking at the data, looking at what's happening, that Detroit is not the resilient community that it needs to be. It's pretty clear that we were caught off guard, but we shouldn't have been. And our speaker is going to talk a little bit more about this later, about the people whose housing was so inadequate that they're doubled up in housing, they're living in inadequate housing, and housing costs are skyrocketing in Detroit faster than just about anywhere in the nation. We should look at the fact that so much housing is in such poor quality and we don't have resources to repair the housing of people who are low income. And look at the fact that between 2008 and 2010, so many people lost their homes. And since then, so many homes are being taken in tax foreclosures. And when people leave one house, they don't necessarily go to a comparable house. What ends up happening is a lot of times they end up in rental housing, and the renters who could afford that housing end up in housing that the housing that people who are lower income than they end up in, and there's a whole group of people who simply have nowhere to live. So we kind of should have known this was going to happen. We should have known that cutting off water would expose us to a public health crisis, because water has always been a foundation of public health. Since as long as, people understood that bacteria and viruses cause disease, we understood that indoor plumbing was a way to prevent disease. And when you cut people off of water, you then limit their ability to protect the health of themselves and people in the community they come in contact with. So we should have known that. There's quite evidence. Every time there's there's a flu season or cold season, people say, wash your hands and show us how to do it thoroughly. But if you are depending on drinking water for your cooking needs, for your bathing needs, for everything that you do, it kind of makes it difficult to say, let's wash our hands 3 or 4 times a day. And so sometimes hygiene is what gets sacrificed because low-income people can't afford to really do the things that we mandate that people do. There are some other things that we should have known. We should have known that our air quality in the city of Detroit is sometimes is poor, and therefore people have pre-existing diseases caused by poor air quality. In the east side of Detroit, how many hospitals shut down? We had Mercy Hospital shut down, then to become Samaritan, and that shut down as a full hospital. We had Riverview Hospital shut down on Jefferson, and what we're replaced with is a set of clinics that don't really provide full service health care. And so we should have known that there's consequences to that. And so here we are as Eastside Community Network, really charged with the responsibility to try to address the challenges that people in this community face, trying to help people understand the data, trying to therefore use the data to develop plans, trying to use those plans to promote equity, and also to advocate for change at the public policy level, at the city, state, and federal level, as well as at the county level. And we find ourselves also trying to work together to implement pilot projects that will help address some of those challenges. As you listen to the staff today and they give their presentation, you'll hear various iterations of how we are working to try to make changes in our community for climate equity and also health equity moving forward. And it is our hope and prayer that those people who invest in the community understand that when they start investing again, it's not just about improving healthcare as we know it, improving the current structures of healthcare, but really investing in the community so that we can have a full complement of resources and live equitably with people in other communities. We don't want to be the poster child in every time there's a national disaster. So with that, I would like to invite Camille, who comes after me?
You.
Okay.
With the letter to the CEO from the president.
Well, I'm not going to read the letter because I just highlighted what was in the letter. That letter will be read, posted in the annual report. But I want to thank you guys for listening and for considering the concerns that we have and really understanding the link between the pandemic, climate equity, and the health challenges that we have moving forward, because the planet is warming. Even as we talk about that, the streets are flooding on the east side of Detroit. Those people who live near the Detroit River are already experiencing flooding, and we're expecting record highs. Again, our air is polluted, our basements are flooding, and we need to do something different in our community. So I think next we go to the finance report. Holly Benford is going to give our finance report.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Holly Benford, Finance Director. I bring to you 2019 financial report. We'll start with the balance sheet. Total assets, $2,580,424. Liabilities, $984,591. And total equity, $1,595,833. Moving on to the income statement. Total revenue for 2019 was $2,141,488. Total expenses, $2,072,569, bringing total net income of $68,919. Next slide, please. And now we'll break down our 2019 income. The larger portion of income would be foundation grants, which were 56% of total revenue. Earned income was 29% of earned revenue was 29% of revenue. Contract revenue was 2%. Fundraising income and government grants were both at 6%. Thank you to all of our funders for 2019. We definitely thank you for believing in our mission and our vision and investing in us. We'd like to mention some of our major funders, which include Cedar Tree Foundation, City of Detroit, Kim Bank, Comerica Bank, Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, ECN Foundation, Herb Foundation, FCA Foundation, Ford Foundation, Institute for Sustainable Communities, and Chase Foundation, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, Knight Foundation, Kresge Foundation, PNC Foundation, Quicken Loans, and Wayne State University. Thank you so much. Now I will pivot to Savannah Brewer for our COP presentation.
Hello, thank you, Holly. I am Savannah Brewer, Director of Community Organizing and Planning. And last year, our department continued to support former Partnership for Economic Independence program members through Power Hours to share resources, fellowship, and celebrate their met goals with employment, housing, or volunteer commitments. We supported 2 new brilliant Detroit homes being located in the Leak District, one in the Chalmers Park neighborhood and the other in the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood, both to service as a community center. We staff monthly homeowner property tax workshops supporting over 200 residents for the year. The LEAP Lower East Side Action Plan Steering Committee voted to expand include the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood. So now we extend from the west on Mount Elliott over to Verner on the south and up north to Gratiot Triangle. We worked with the McDougal-Hunt Neighborhood Association and community gatherings and oversaw up to 30 residents receive new low toilets and plumbing repairs. We received funding to host an AmeriCorps state member for family financial stability work and planning our Show Me the Money Day event, offering virtual income tax assistance and hosting financial workshops. We also launched our census work at Neighborhoods Day last August to ensure accurate counting within our undercounted populations. We continue our work within the Goodstock Detroit community with its residents and planning consultants on 2 projects, the Community Planning Project and the Proof of Concepts Project. We also launched the LEAP Sustainability Fellowship, a program of 14 fellows to build capacity in resident engagement, sustainability, and community leadership. LEAP Steering Committee voted to expand its membership, and it's made up of 25 committee members with 13 residents, 8 community development organizations, and 4 technical partners. And we ended the year by celebrating the LEAP 10-year anniversary of its planning and implementation process, and also held the LEAP Steering Committee elections for our residential seats. We look forward to completing the first cohort of the LEAP Sustainability Fellowship and launching the second one, launching the Eastside Votes campaign, beginning to implement the McDougal Hunt Neighborhood Development Plan, continuing to support residents with property tax exemptions, other financial services, and hosting virtual workshops for overall financial stability, hosting virtual events to promote the 2020 census, and hosting the LEAP Steering Committee planning retreat, and mostly amplifying the voices of the residents in which we serve. And now I will turn it over to Ricky Ackerman, Director of Climate Equity.
Thank you, Savannah. So as she said, I'm Ricky Ackerman, the Director of Climate Equity. So 2019 was a major year for our Climate Equity Department because we formally established it as a department within ECN. And as Donna spoke to, we have a lot of emerging and present environmental concerns in our communities on the east side. So with the FCA expansion, our air quality concerns have increased. Flooding has been a consistent issue in Jeff Chalmers and other neighborhoods on the east side for a long time. And we know as we look forward, climate change is going to continue to increase these issues and cause new ones. So we really wanted to establish ECN as a major leader in this area so that we can begin to help our communities prepare for these increased challenges as well as the ones that we currently are faced with. And with support from Kresge and ISC, the Institute for Sustainable Communities, we were able to establish this department and really take a big step forward in amplifying the community voice and ECN's role in these initiatives across the city of Detroit and in the state of Michigan. With that, we formed the Eastside Climate Advisory Group, which is a subcommittee of our LEAP Steering Committee. And it's a collection of officials, organizations, and residents from Detroit to get together and talk about these issues that are impacting our communities and develop and steer solutions and as we move along. And if anyone's interested in being a part of that, please reach out to us. Another major event that took place in 2019 was the opening of our Hamilton Rainscape Learning Lab. We celebrated that with a Juneteenth event on June 19th. And it's a space, a green and stormwater infrastructure park across from Hamilton Academy in the Chandler Park neighborhood that we're really excited after a lot of hard work that finally was completed. And it now is helping address flooding and sewer overflow issues in the Chandler Park neighborhood in the city of Detroit, and serves as an educational space. And we gained a lot of attention to that and to stormwater issues in Detroit through being a part of the Detroit Design 139 exhibition and several tours and field trips from conferences and other organizations over the course of the summer. We also completed another green stormwater infrastructure project at the Canfield Garden of Peace and Unity. We took 6 parcels purchased from the land bank, cleaned them up, and had to remove several truckloads of debris and brush, and were able to install rain gardens. And that's going to be a project that continues to advance and add amenities for the community members in that area to enjoy. In September, we hosted an air quality forum with several partners, including State Senator Stephanie Chang, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the Detroit People's Platform, and a variety of other partners to really bring attention to the air quality concerns that come with the FCA expansion on the east side. We will continue to host events like that to really drive the messaging and information sharing around these issues as our community faces them. We also facilitated the collection of signatures to support further air quality protections, and that was led by the Detroit People's Platform and supported by our sustainability fellows. We also worked with the Detroit Collaborative Design Center, Zachary Associates, Great Lakes Environmental Law Center, and others on a good stock proof of concept study where we were looking at means of leveraging resources to invest in green stormwater infrastructure in highly vacant neighborhoods to bring that investment in areas that might not see it. And that was with URB support. We continue to advance our partnerships and increase our role in the climate sphere and environmental sphere across Detroit and the state of Michigan. And really were able to expand our role and our presence in those conversations. And then looking forward to 2020, a major part of what we want to achieve this year is developing the East Side Climate Health Agenda. So the Climate Equity Department and the East Side Climate Advisory Group will be working to build a platform that we can advocate for to really prepare our communities for the coming challenges of climate and the public health crisis that we're already facing. But building resiliency and sustainability into the way we operate in Detroit. And with that, we will be piloting resiliency hubs, sites where people can come for resources, for shelter in times of crisis, and really strengthen the role of community centers in distributing resources and providing support through crises. And we will continue to expand our partnerships and grow our voice and really try to amplify the role of community members in climate issues. And with that, I will pass it on to our Director of Youth Development, Tanya Aho.
Hello. This year, this has been an exciting year. We, at our youth center, we continued our Creative Vocations program, which was a program written by our youth. The grant was written by our youth. The annual art show, where our youth both showcase and sell their art, our young artists. The summer youth employment program, and the cooking program that we have every Wednesday, and our Teen Advisory Council, who do a lot of the directing and making decisions of the different things that we concentrate on in the vault. We also started our third year of the Community Development Speaker Series at Southeastern, where we go in and teach a class about what a career in community development looks like, and we have speakers from the community come and talk to the students that we work with there. And we actually expanded this year to do 2 classes a week. We hosted college tours for our college access program, going to Central Michigan University, College of Creative Studies, Michigan University, Eastern Michigan, I'm sorry, University of Michigan, and we did an HBCU tour in South Carolina. Our vault seniors, we had our first graduating class this year, and we were both sad but also proud of them as they left. We have students that are attending Benedict College, Eastern Michigan University, Henry Ford Community College, Michigan State University, Mississippi Valley State University, Wayne Community College, and we have a United States Marine among our graduates. The Youth Vault last year were awarded $63,000 in scholarships, which includes a full ride scholarship to Benedict College by one of our young people. We're looking forward. This year we have continued our college access program, and we currently have 12 seniors in our program. This year we went to an HBCU college tour in Ohio, and we also toured the College of Creative Studies, Eastern Michigan University, and the University of Michigan. So far, the graduating seniors have been awarded $45,000 in scholarships. They are not done. In fact, I'm applying for 4 of them have completed the Blue Oval Scholarship and will be applying tomorrow. And they're still making decisions about where they're going to end up as it's that time of year. Oh, and now I'll turn it over to Ian to talk about MAC business development.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Building upon our work in 2019, some of the things we are working on in 2020 is continuing to expand and strengthen our commercial development activities on MAC, in particular between Conner and Ross, supporting those businesses, as well as building upon our great and what we believe to be a historic partnership with the cities of Grosse Pointe Park, the city of Grosse Pointe, and Grosse Pointe Farms, to continue building upon our initial boundary and expanding from our phase 1 footprint, which was from Conner to Cadieux, now all the way down to Maross. We are also working with our strategy committee and the planning firm McKenna Associates to host 2 additional meetings for the communities adjacent to that expanded area, continuing to increase our MABA membership and host regular meetings throughout the year. We actually did just have one this past Monday, and it is on our Facebook page. So if you're interested, you can go and check out that recording. We did administer 3 facade improvement grants, including one that was completed, and facilitated the design and painting of a mural along the corridor. We continue to assist prospective business owners in identifying new space for opening and operating their business. We were fortunate this past February to graduate a new class of prosperous entrepreneurs, and just this past Tuesday welcomed in a brand new class that will be wrapping up a little bit later towards this year. So very exciting to continue to building upon the entrepreneurial ecosystem on the east side of Detroit. And then we are in the process of analyzing the structural feasibility for a Mack Avenue Business District formation, what that might look like in terms of beautification and funding and things like that. And that concludes my section, and Angela will get into a little bit more later about our business COVID-19 response. And with that, I will turn it over to Camille.
Thank you, Ian. So 2019 was a great year for ECN in terms of our special events and our continued community engagement. We hosted our 35th ECN Annual Meeting on Thursday, April 18th to celebrate ECN's 35th anniversary of creating an impact and driving sustainable change for people, plants, and places on the Lower East Side. The event was also an open house held at our Mack Market property on Mack Avenue, and we had a guest keynote speaker who was Rashida Tlaib, as well as Eastside residents, community stakeholders who got a chance to see our space and hear more about our work. We also hosted the 31st annual Eastside Extravaganza, at where the entire thing began, the Rooster Tail on the riverfront. It was another very successful night for fundraising. We raised over $100,000 in charitable sponsorships and donations. And it was an evening of dinner, dancing, and awards that was emceed by local meteorologist and reporter Andrew Humphrey. True to the Eastside Extravaganza, we had our ECN Awardees last year. The Honorable Teola Hunter received the Eastside Legends Award. The Honorable Rashida Tlaib received our Maggie DeSantis Truth to Power Award. Rachel Alternative received the Eastside Innovator Award. Ron Stallworth was awarded as the Eastside Corporate Champion. Stephen Horton was our Eastside Youth Awardee. Jennifer Smith was awarded as our Outstanding Partner. And Roderick Hunter was our William May Gaskin Volunteerism Awardee. We also continued with the Eastside Favorite Mo Better Awards. Last year, Audio Wave Network was awarded as our best small business, voted by the community. The community voted Detroit Hives as the best Eastside Fun Spot. They voted the J Spot as the best employer of Eastside residents. East English Village was awarded or voted as the best neighborhood association, and Flames Pizzeria on East Warren received the award for best restaurant from the community. 2019 was also an exciting year to kick off some new programs that we're hoping will serve as a good base of fundraising in the future. One of those is our ECN Sustainability Tours. So these are 1-hour bus tours that kind of tour our impact area on the east side, highlighting our community planning work, our climate equity work, our business development work, and our youth development work. Many of our guests were excited to learn more about the personal stories from our community residents and excited for the opportunity to kind of immerse themselves on the East Side. Unfortunately, we had to postpone our tours for this year, but we look forward to being able to continue our sustainability tours in the fall. Finally, we launched our podcast, Authentically Detroit, in 2019, led by President and CEO Donna L. Givens and former Chief Development Officer Orlando Bailey. The podcast aims to create an intergenerational platform to discuss topics of local importance and recent news items through the lens of equity. Since the launch of the podcast 1 year ago, we've recorded 30 episodes, and you can tune in every Tuesday to hear the latest episode on our website. Authentically Detroit is solely funded by the Ford Foundation. And with that, I will now pass off to Angela Wilson to do our ECN, sorry, I'm skipping forward, to do our ECN response to COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Camille, great job. You go forward one slide. So, good evening, everyone. As ECN manage and work to recover from COVID-19 crisis, we have shifted our work. Most of you know that our office is closed in mid-March, but we continue to work from home. As always, our commitment is to support our residents by providing resources and vetted quality information to help support them in maintaining their health and meet their needs. One of the first things we did to respond to the crisis was the creation of 3 hotlines to serve the community. The hotlines are designed to provide information that we have not only vetted, but that we know comes from reliable sources and provides quality resources for residents, provides things like social support, health equity resources, access to family and youth and business services. 3 hotline numbers are on your screen. There's a residential hotline. We can help you answer questions about your stimulus resource funds, or how to access food if you're in an emergency, or how to support you related to other types of crises that you may be dealing with during this quarantine period. The youth hotline is manned by our youth department and provides opportunity for young people or their families to call in to request resources and assistance. And then our business hotline is specifically for businesses that we serve. Any businesses can call, but we have a distinct focus on Mac Avenue. And we have primarily been trying to support businesses, holding on to have the resources they need, understand how those loans and forgivable loans are operating and how they may be able to take advantage of them. We also, as is our norm at ECN, we try not to duplicate what's already existing in the community, but we try to step in where we can to provide things that residents might not have access to. So our department, our community organizing and planning department, together with our operations department, have been providing community care kits to residents. Last week, the care kit was actually a food kit for shut-ins, for people who didn't have transportation to get to the many food distribution sites throughout the neighborhood. They actually delivered those delivered meals to those families door to door. And that was through our partnership with the Salvation Army. And this week they delivered kits that included masks, sanitizer, toilet paper, some hygiene products, and a resource guide that lists all the different resources that may be beneficial to residents. We have also been conducting a survey among residents, businesses, and youth, because we really want to be clear that we know what residents, businesses, and youth need, what their concerns are, so that we can work to make sure the resources are available here in our community now, but also when it is time for our communities to reopen after the pandemic is over. Next slide. Our youth department has continued to support the young people that have been participating with us through weekly check-in calls and sometimes daily calls, depending on what the young person is dealing with. They are providing virtual college coaching one-on-one with the young people who are seniors and preparing to go to college, which is critical. Many of these young people are first-time college attendees and don't have the support that they need to know what to do next, to stay on top of the portals that the colleges provide for them. So they have coaching and support them with that, as well as scholarship writing. We've provided 16 of the young people with computers so they can continue to do their coursework from home, which was a big challenge for most of them, and have supported them in understanding how to get access to the internet at home as well, and provide food and safety items to them. And we also have recently entered into some partnerships with college students to provide one-on-one tutoring for students so that they can be successful even during this quarantine period. For our businesses, Mack Avenue MABA has hosted two virtual webinars where they've provided some very important technical assistance to support business owners who are seeking grants and loans that are they've administered a business survey, which is continuing, so that we better understand their needs and can be best prepared to support them. We're in the process of developing an emergency fund and technical resources to help businesses to reopen and to sustain themselves as they go forward. One of the things that we are doing that I think is really important is where there are businesses on Mack Avenue who believe that they could do business online. We're trying to provide them access to resources to support them to transition from just brick and mortar to also being online during quarantine and going back to being both brick and mortar and an online business once we are able to reopen. So we are continuing to try to respond to the needs that are there. We encourage you to call the hotlines if you have questions or need our support with anything. That is the end of my presentation. I have the honor and privilege of introducing you guys again to our Director of Community Organizing and Planning, Savannah Brewer, who will share a piece that she wrote for the LEAP 10-year anniversary called Eastside Pride. Savannah, you're still muted.
There we go. Thank you. Eastside Pride. When I think about the SAG, I immediately think about home because that's what the locals call it. See, I was from SAG and all, but here with y'all, Detroit inspires focus. As you have chosen to call your community home, to stay in a foundation where you belong, right here in your neighborhoods, carrying on, moving along, living among. Diversity, gentrification, Lower East Side action plans, neighbors that just barely make it. In a city where what's happening is not always happening amongst you, and that's not leaning on negativity, but truth. Seem like the East Side got something to prove. Has this community been forgotten? Blocks full of needed home repairs and vacant land, unlit alleyways and overgrown trees, while downtown undergoes structural surgery of the richest plan. Got me rehashing which structure it is that's rotten. Got me thinking so often what it is that we can come together and determine for the future of our neighborhoods to be. Experiencing a space where neighbors can meet, plan, develop projects all within one leap, with walkways, playscapes, community gardens, and maybe a spot for benches. Since I've been here, ECN, Herb Foundation, Chandler Park, CPC, JEI, what about us ain't been fighting in them trenches? McDougal, huh? I see you too. Expanding boundaries, communal engagement, strengthening the nation within ourselves, within our neighborhoods, within our environment, our churches, ready to face structural oppression entirely. Your roots deep within the East Side inspire me to a knowledge of self and understanding of our purpose. East Side, y'all deserve it. And we all must work to earn it. Wouldn't it be worth the risk if inside our own communities, safe walks to school and down our streets, unbroken homes, water reactivation, environmental conservation, revitalized properties. Close your eyes, imagine this. One day, together, we will, we still exist. So keep your heads high, bright ideas, keep bringing them by. So much love for a city showing off Detroit pride, here and alive. 10 years deep, it's LEAP on the Lower East Side. Peace.
See, Shift Command
Anna, you're
muted, Donna.
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry, I should understand this better. I apologize for that. So with that, I want to thank, where are we? I want to thank Savannah and the staff for presenting, doing an outstanding job presenting our work for the year. I want to shout out Orlando Bailey, who is with us today, who is my co-host for Authentically Detroit, for continuing to work with us, although he has moved on. And I also want to shout out the people who are on Facebook watching us right now. If you're on Facebook, hey, what's up? Make sure that you feel included. I think right now I'm handing off to Charles Walker to talk about the board elections.
Yes. So it comes to time, every year we are changing board members, and in some cases we are not changing, and we don't plan to change this year. We do have some board members, if they voted in, that we want to include. Donna, do you have that list of nominees for the board?
I do. Right this year, Jonathan Dimmers, Darnell Adams, Greg Donnelly, Charles Walker, Edgar Van III, and Mark Owens' terms are up for renewal. And so normally we would ask people to raise their hands and say aye if they supported the renewal of these board members, but since we are now electronic and still trying to figure out how to make it work, if you are on this platform, you can go to chat, and I believe in the chat button you can either say yay or do a thumbs up. And the same thing, if you are on Facebook Live, you can say yay or do a thumbs up. I'm not quite sure how to do it if you are on the phone. Please, those of us who are in the meeting, just because we are staff, we are still eligible to vote. So far, we have all thumbs up. Well, it looks like we have the yays have it. I don't see any no's. Charles?
All right.
Welcome our new board members.
So I'd like to welcome our newborn board members to the 2020 season of ECN. I'm glad you guys are planning on participating. We have a lot of work that we're going to do in 2020, and just look forward to a lot of events and continue to participate. And Donna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, I want to congratulate our newly elected board members. We are so glad that you, first of all, decided to stay on our board. A great board makes a great organization, and we do have a great, wonderful board. Our first speaker is slated to be none other than our State Senator Stephanie Chang. However, as events have it, she is stuck in Lansing, arguing for the survival of our people by trying to stop the shutdown of the, trying to stop people from removing powers from our governor, who is trying her best to make sure we all live. So with that, we are going to move ahead in our schedule. She's going to call in later if she's able to make it. But we also have a couple other great speakers. We're going to start with none other than one of my sheroes, somebody who has been around in Detroit doing things for as long as I remember. On a personal note, Reverend Dr. Joanne Watson knew my grandmother, who was a volunteer at the downtown YWCA, I believe. And so we talked about her, and that was so special to me, actually brought tears to my eyes because she told me stories about my grandmother I never knew. Joanne is a person who knows everybody and who's done so many things, but I'm going to read you her formal biography. She's an American pastor, media personality, and was a Detroit City Council member for 10 years. She is currently on air personality for Channel 91 WHPR as the host of none other than Wake Up Detroit. And those of you who know her know she's been waking us up for decades. Watson is also a professor at Wayne County Community College, where she teaches English and journalism. She is the senior pastor of Westside Unity Church and a faculty member at the Unity Urban Ministerial School. A 1968 graduate of Central High School, Watson received her Journalism of Arts degree in journalism, her Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism from the University of Michigan. Let me stop and say, go blue. And she's been with a Leonard Sain Esteemed Alumni Award. Watson was also awarded an honorary doctorate in humanities from the University of Michigan. Prior to her service as a member of the City Council, Watson served as a public liaison for the Congressman John Conyers. In 2003, she filed to run in a special election to fill a vacancy on Detroit City Council, which was created when Councilwoman Brenda Scott died on September 2nd, 2002. February 23rd, 2003, Dick Gregory headlined Watson's first political fundraiser. On April 29, 2003, Watson won the special election 52 to 48%, defeating the highly favored Gil Hill, who was famous for playing the sharp-tongued police inspector in 3 Beverly Cop movies. Watson would subsequently win re-election to City Council and serve as City Council President pro tem. During her tenure, Watson sponsored thousands of laws, including laws that ban texting and talking while driving, a ban on smoking in public places, and the Water Affordability Plan, which helps low-income citizens avoid water shutoffs. In 2009, The Nation magazine recognized Watson as the most valuable local elected official in the USA. During Watson's tenure on City Council, her staff included Michigan State Legislator Coleman A. Young, who interned in her office. In 2013, Watson announced her intention to retire. In December of 2003, a celebration of her career was held at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, where Dick Gregory once again was the headliner. So please join me in welcoming the Reverend Dr. Joanne Watson, who's we're so grateful to have address us this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you. So grateful to be here to help salute the Eastside Community Network 36th Annual Meeting. Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you.
I thank you for the kind introduction. I want to thank our board president, board chairman, Brother Charles Walker. God bless you. Thank you for being the policy-making leader for Eastside Community Network. I want to talk about, first of all, the quality of the leadership of Eastside Community Network and the staff. I'm thrilled to hear the staff reports tonight and how you cover the width and breadth of many of the communities that help to make Detroit so strong. And let me say for the record, I did go to high school on the west side, but I was born on the east side. I was born on the east, so you need to know that. So, and my father's mother had a house on the east side that welcomed everybody from our family that came from the south originally. They stopped on the east side at my big mama's house. So praise God for the east side. It's important that we recognize that Detroit should not be viewed by any of us, and really not by the nation, as any epicenter of pathology. I reject that view. I don't own that. I believe we need to get to the roots of why there is disproportionate suffering. It's because there's been disproportionate equity. Disproportionate equity. One of the reasons that Detroit has suffered disproportionately from this coronavirus is because 1 in 7 households don't have access to clean water. Water shutoffs. Help me, Holy Ghost. Right at the center of that challenge. When you have more than 100,000 households who've had the water shut off, you're not going to be able to have the kind of hygiene that will repel the coronavirus. And people who live in homes where there's no water, that doesn't mean they stay at home. Many of them are working. They're working somewhere to try to live. And we should not accept a society, particularly in a state surrounded by the Great Lakes, where every human being does not have access to fresh water. I happen to believe that water is a human right. Just as we don't get charged to breathe the air, we shouldn't have to pay for water. We should not be paying for water, particularly Detroiters who've been paying retail for water when the suburban customers pay wholesale rates. Did you know that? We pay retail and we own the water system. There's something wrong with that picture. There's something wrong with the picture of Detroiters who have been over-assessed in taxes, over-assessed to the point that many of them left their homes, over-assessed. And then it was revealed years after the fact that they were charged too much, over-assessed for taxes. And that is one of those reasons that has put Detroit at the matrix of injustice in terms of poverty and equity. You also look at the incidence of education. Education has not been well served in our community, not because there's anything wrong with Detroiters. It's because there's something wrong with the system that put in one emergency manager after another, who has brought down the level of education, who has created a great debt and put that on the backs of Detroiters who can ill afford it. When you look at Detroit citizens who have been resilient, who have been absolutely profound in their support of this great city, they also have had to suffer through air pollution from the incinerator that just got closed, from the significance of recycling that has never been used to its maximum degree. There's a lot of work to do. And one of the things we must do is convince Detroiters that we have the right to own and not just be consumers. We have the right to own businesses in our own community and not just patronize and make everybody else rich. So I'm delighted to know about your wonderful efforts in entrepreneurship, your efforts to lift up Mack Avenue and other parts of the East Side, because we must move not just to purchase, but to own. We must own. And we also must demand that there be some kind of reparations paid to Detroiters who have been over-assessed in their taxes, Detroiters who have been supporting industries that have never hired their fair share of Detroiters for contracts. There must be a level of reparations, internal reparations, and the East Side ought to be first in line to collect reparations. Thank you, Madam President and CEO Donna Givens.
A few minutes, and I want to ask you some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you passed water affordability legislation, but that water affordability legislation is no longer in place. What happened to it?
After I was out of office, I served for a decade. The administration scuttled it, abandoned its implementation of despite the fact that I passed it as law. They stopped doing it, and let me say that there was some initial resistance to a water affordability plan because some people said it was illegal to help poor people pay their water bills. But then I found out from Victor Mercado, who then was the leader of the water department, who later got indicted for some things. He's let it slip in a public hearing at city council meeting that they were putting the late fees and delinquent charges in a budget in a fund that was off budget. When I found out they had $5 million off budget, I said, that's how we can afford it. It wouldn't be coming from the ratepayers. It would be coming from that fund. And I suspect that since they did it then, they probably still have an off budget collection of late fees and delinquencies. And that should be used to support our households who need to have their water bill paid, because the water must be turned on. Water is a human right. You cannot live without water. You cannot survive without water. We need it for our children. We need it for our elders. We need it for those who have health issues. And they never should have scuttled and ended the water affordability plan. It took me 5 years to pass it with the Honorable Marianne Mahaffey. We had to fight to pass it. Then after finally getting it implemented, and we had the wonderful implementation of citizens were finally getting some support, not rhetoric, but real support and help for their water bills. Then they ended it without rationale, without a cause. It's a disgrace before God.
Yes. So another question I had, something I think it would be helpful for you to share is when you and I talked a few years ago, we talked about Dr. Ben Chavis and environmental racism and your work with him on environmental racism. And I don't know, I think a lot of people have this perception that environmental causes are not causes that Black people fight for. But indeed, that's something that you have been fighting for. Can you share some of that history with us?
I can. There was a period in my life, and I'm a native Detroiter, but there was a period when I was recruited to work for the National YWCA, the USA in New York City. And I was blessed to be in a position that was created by Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, who's one of my personal sheroes. She was a successor to Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune at the National Council of Negro Women. At the same time she led NCNW, she was also the highest ranking Black woman in charge of the National YWCA of the USA Office of Racial Justice. So I succeeded her in that office. And and I learned as director of the Office of Racial Justice that the United Methodist Church, where Dr. Ben Chavis had been the director of racial justice, he published a book called Toxic Waste and Race. And while I was sitting in New York, before I moved back to Detroit, looking through that booklet, I began to realize I saw my own city had been identified as a city that was filled with toxic waste disproportionately surrounding people of color. And that's what's happening all over this country. They had a demographic chart showing Atlanta, showing Los Angeles, showing New York, and it was no coincidence that everywhere toxic waste were in this country, there was a predominance of people of color. So that Toxic Waste and Race book that was published by the United Methodist Church, I used that as a primer as I traveled around to YWCAs all over the country to help them understand the connection between racism and toxic contamination of our air, our water, and our soil. And of course, when I came to City Council, following my stint as the director of the NACP in Detroit, when I came back home, I immediately became active in shutting down the incinerator and became active with all the groups that are working in environmental justice. So that's near and dear to my heart. And toxic waste and race is not something that is only for certain groups. Everybody ought to be engaged because all of us have the right to breathe. We all have the right to have access to clean water and to pure soil.
You know, someone raised a question the other day, was there any place in the nation where there was no charge for water, where water was provided free of charge? And what I hear people say is, no, it costs money to process water. It costs money to clean water, so of course it's not going to be free. But it costs money to provide police service. It costs money to provide public lighting. It costs money to do so many things in our city and manage our city in so many ways to operate parks, and yet we are not charged a fee for those services. So this concept that water is a commodity is really a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice. It's an absolute choice, and it ought to be a moral choice, a humane choice. I mean, here we are, all of us operating with sheltered and stay-at-home policies because this coronavirus has impacted us and caused us to respond in an emergency way. What's happened to affordable quality water in this world is also an emergency. It's an emergency in Detroit that 1 in 7 households don't have access to clean water. It's an emergency around this nation, just as Detroit has been impacted. And certainly everybody knows the story of Flint. Somebody ought to be in jail for Flint because they disconnected Flint from Detroit's water system only because of greed. They were trying to make Detroit's water system look less profitable. That was the real reason they disconnected Flint from Detroit's water system and then connected Flint to that dirty Flint River, where the water was so bad in the Flint River, General Motors stopped using the water for their automobiles. So it was all done out of greed, profit, and absolute disconnect with the people. They didn't care about the people of Flint or the people in Detroit. That was done based on some corporate cronyism. It had nothing to do with the people. And water ought to be a human right, just as we don't pay any monthly bill to breathe air. We should not be paying for water.
Agreed. Are there any others who would like to ask questions while we still have this time? While people are formulating their questions, I'm going to go on to my next question. What do you recommend we do right at this moment of time? I accept the statement that this is not the epicenter of failure, but I do think that the suffering here is uniquely is a unique challenge in our community. We have a higher rate, it seems, of people who are getting sick and dying than other places, and it breaks my heart to see how many people have lost so many people. And I really think that when all is said and done, when we stop sheltering in place, we go back out into the world and reconnect as a people, the amount of trauma that we were going to be carrying with us is something that we have not even begun to predict. So I wonder if you have any recommendations for us as an organization, how we can impact the community and improve on what we're doing.
Well, certainly, first of all, I want to extend my thoughts and my hearts and prayers to everyone who has suffered loss from this coronavirus. I have suffered loss, people in my family, friends, co-workers. I've lost people. I lost a godson, the Honorable Isaac Robinson, who was one of my 40 godchildren. Just broke my heart that we lost him. One of the things we can do during this period is decide that out of the viciousness of this coronavirus, we have the opportunity to organize. We should not be sitting idly by watching television reruns or watching an endless supply of horrific stories about the virus and how challenging it is in our society. We should be using this time not just to get reacquainted with our families, but to get reacquainted with our hopes and dreams. We have the time now. Everybody has time they didn't know they were going to have to organize. Organize, and use organization to put your money together, to buy the empty shop on your block, and operate a business that provides a service or a product that you think people will support and buy. You have the skill, you have wisdom, you have the background. You know what people need, because there are some stores closing, of course. But guess who's flourishing? Delivery companies. People who deliver anything, they have a waiting list that they can't even manage.
Right.
Groceries are being delivered. Food is being delivered. Supplies are being delivered. So there are some businesses that are flourishing. We need to open our own business. Stop driving 20, 40 miles to some other city where they're going to follow you around like you're some kind of criminal. Open a business in your own city, and then have your church and your block club patronize the business. We need to support ourselves, do for self, and we all have this time that has been given to us. Snatch some economic victory out of this time we didn't even know we were going to have. Organize.
Mm-hmm. Yep, well, we will accept that call. Those old adage that necessity is a motherhood of invention, and we need a lot, so let's invent and have confidence in our ability to fulfill needs. I want to thank you, but we are not done asking you questions. We're going to open up questions and answers later on. I want to also ask people, if you have a burning question that you want to ask the Honorable Joanne Watson, please write it down and we'll come back to you. But we are now joined by a friend who the last time I saw him he was on CNN. And first time I met him, he was at a boardroom table at ECN, and then he was on CNN. So, wow, what a way he's traveled. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, who is a physician, epidemiologist, public health expert, and progressive activist. He is the chair at Southpaw, Michigan, and a contributor at CNN. He is the author of a brand new book, Healing Politics, which was just published, and which diagnoses our country's epidemic of insecurity and the empathy politics we need to treat it, as well as Medicare for All, a Citizen's Guide, Oxford University Press, which will be published, I guess, next year with Micah Johnson. He hosts America Dissected, a podcast by Crooked Media, which goes beyond the headlines to explore what really matters for our health. In 2018, Abdul ran for governor of Michigan on an unapologetically progressive platform, advocating for universal health care, clean water for all, debt-free and tuition-free higher education, a pathway to 100% renewable energy, and to rebuild the barrier between corporations and government. His bid was endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The Nation, and Current Affairs. And though he earned over 340,000 votes, he finished second of 3 in the Democratic primary. Prior, he served as our very own health commissioner, appointed to rebuild the city's health department after it was privatized during municipal bankruptcy. He was the youngest health official in a major U.S. city, responsible for the health and safety of over 670,000 Detroiters. The Detroit Health Department became a state and national leader in public health innovation and environmental justice in one of the fastest municipal public health turnarounds in American history. He was awarded Public Official of the Year by Michigan League of Conservation Voters and 40 Under 40 by Crain's Detroit Business. As a professor at Columbia University's Department of Epidemiology, Abdul became an internationally recognized expert in health policy and health inequalities. He was director of the Columbia University Systems Science Program and Global Research Analytics for Population Health. He has over 100 peer-reviewed publications that have earned over 1,200 citations, including a foundational textbook on system science and population health, published at Oxford University in 2016. Abdul holds a doctorate in public health from Oxford University, where he was a Rhodes Scholar, as well as a medical degree from Columbia University, where he was a medical sciences training program fellow and a Soros New American Fellow. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa with highest distinction from the University of Michigan, where he was chosen to deliver the student champion speech alongside President Bill Clinton. I believe he was also recognized as a notable alumni in 2013. He is a native Michigander who was born and raised in Metro Detroit, where he lives with his wife, Sarah, a mental health doctor, and daughter, Emily. He enjoys good people, good coffee, good food, sports, and University of Michigan football. He is a proud member of UAW Local 1981 and AFT Local 477. And with that, I give you Dr. Abdul El-Sayed.
Ms. Donna, it's a privilege to be with you. Thank you so much for having me today. And I'll tell you, I'll take ECN over CNN any day. So I really, really appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about where we are in the context of where we've been, because in the middle of a pandemic, it's really easy for folks to say, well, we didn't see this thing coming, right? It just came out of nowhere and it emerged, and here we are, and now we got to deal with it. But one of the things that I remember learning in my epidemiology PhD was that while viruses may be an act of God, pandemics are man-made. And where we were tells us where we are, and I think the contrast between those two things should tell us where we need to be. I came back to the city of Detroit in 2015 from a job in New York where I was a professor. And I walked into a city health department that had 5 city employees and 85 contractors in the back of a building where people pay parking tickets. And the decision was made to shut down Detroit's health department when the city was facing municipal bankruptcy and emergency management, state takeover of its democratic right to self-determination. And that means that today, the city is dealing with COVID-19 with a health department that is functionally 5 years old. I want you to think about that. A health department that's 5 years old in a city that is centuries old. And in my role, we got to building. That's when I got to meet Ms. Donna and the team at ECN, folks like Orlando and Camille. And we got to building and wanted to take on some of the bigger challenges that we faced. But every time the issue around lead or around the fact that the city's demolitions program was credibly and based on our own analysis at the health department, exposing kids to lead, or when it came to issues related to water shutoffs, I realized that the city leadership, elected officials, did not want to pay attention. It was impolitic because that was, of course, 2015, 2016, when the Flint water crisis was just unfolding before our eyes. And the parallels there were obvious, and they knew it, and that's exactly why they didn't want to do anything about it. And I sat in my role at the health department in Detroit, I sat on a couple of panels to deal with Flint at the state level. And watched as the state government that had poisoned 9,000 kids in a city that's a small version of Detroit, wanted to put paper on the problem. You know, we would write and write and write and come up with all these solutions, and then the report that would actually go out was a watered down version without any of the actual solutions, because of course they don't want to be held accountable for the things that they should have done. And then I watched Donald Trump get elected president, right? So I'm seeing the political failures at the city level, an unwillingness for city leadership to take on issues relevant to the well-being of our kids. I'm seeing the failures at the state level with a governor and his administration that poisoned 9,000 kids. And then I'm seeing a failure at our federal level. And that was when I decided to run for office. Now, you all know what happened there. I didn't win, and that's why I get to hang out with you. But I did learn a lot. Now, I trained as an epidemiologist. Epidemiology, nobody knew what an epidemiologist was 6 months ago. Now, all of a sudden, everybody on Twitter is an epidemiologist, so there's that. But what epidemiology actually is the study of the distribution and determinants of disease in populations. Our job is to understand the patterns of what cause illness in people. And when I decided to run, this was back in 2017, 2018, I had thought that I'd put the epidemiologist in my head away, right? And I just sort of banished him out of my head, and now I was a candidate for public office. But, you know, when you learn something, it never really goes away. And so the epidemiologist was in the back of my mind the whole time working. And when you do epidemiology, there's nothing all that exciting about it, because usually you're just on a computer like this, and you're looking at reams and reams and reams of data. Every line is another person. But instead of analyzing lines of data, I was actually meeting people. I was talking to them at their doorsteps, in their living rooms, at their VFW halls, at their union halls. And in doing that, I could see the moments where they were trying to stress something that really mattered. I could feel when they really wanted to tell me something, when they squeezed my hand, when I'd shake it. I could see the stress that hunched it back. And in those interactions, thousands of interactions with people, the epidemiologist in the back of my mind was taking notes, right? Was trying to make a pattern of all of this. And of course, I was driving all the way up to Marquette in the Upper Peninsula, to Petoskey, out west to Berrien County in Benton Harbor. And that meant that I'd spend a lot of time in a car. I think we put 55,000 miles on a car in a year and a half. And on those car rides home, I'd let the epidemiologist out. And me and my epidemiologist in my mind would have a conversation about what we saw. And I had thought when I started my campaign that conventional wisdom was true. That the challenges that poor and working people in places like Detroit or Flint would face would be fundamentally different than the challenges that people in Petoskey or Marquette would face. Because after all, that's what we're taught, right? But I would get to talking to people, and I'd realize that in fact they were exactly the same. The problem is we're so segregated that we share different conversations. So we're having conversations in parallel rather than having conversations with each other. And so the challenges that they'd face, the questions that they'd ask, sounded very, very similar. Why, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, is it that people can get sick and still don't get access to healthcare? Why can Nestle bottle unlimited amounts of our water for $400 a year, and some people in places like Detroit got to pay $400 a month and face getting their water shut off because the costs are so high? Why does our public school still look the same way it did 30 years ago when I went there? And why is it that Betsy DeVos wants to privatize it out and open a charter school in its place? Why is it that our kid has to breathe the polluted air that's coming out of a smokestack down the street, or drink the polluted water that was poisoned by a factory that shut down 20 years ago? These questions were the same. Now, they affect different people differently, no doubt. If you're poor, and certainly if you're black in this country, the confluence of those things hits you harder, hits you faster, and stays longer. But those challenges were similar across the board, speaking to the fact that an economy is locking people out, trading away good quality jobs for gigs, speaking to the fact that our political system cares more about what a CEO can spend to sway a politician than it cares about the problems that poor and working people face and their children face in their schools. These were the issues that people brought up, no matter where I went. And so there's a real challenge here, but there's also some opportunity. The challenge I ended up writing a book about, and I diagnosed the epidemiologist in my mind diagnosed this epidemic of insecurity. And what I mean by that is a fundamental failure in our society to provide the basic means of a dignified life has left us all extremely anxious about the future, about what's coming, because for the last 30 to 40 years, all we have experienced is a systematic degradation of the things we used to rely on. And when we think about COVID-19, this epidemic of insecurity is extremely relevant. And the reason why is because one of those things that has been systematically degraded are basic public institutions. Some of them are public health institutions. And so, you think about an epidemic, and I think about an epidemic kind of like a fire. It always starts small, right, with one small bit of spark, and then it can grow. But what's the difference between it being small and being put out and growing? It's how prepared you were for it in the first place. And right now, the fire of this pandemic, it's as if we took the batteries out of the fire alarm and furloughed the fire staff and then wondered why we're fighting a 4-alarm fire that's hit our entire neighborhood when it started out as a small toaster fire. And that's because we were not prepared. We have systematically dismantled the public institutions that used to keep us safe. Case in point, the Detroit Health Department, right? 185-year-old health department that was decimated during emergency management, that's functionally 5 years old now and is taking on this pandemic. And it's not just Detroit, right? If you look at public health funding at the state and local level, it has dropped by 45% over the past 20 years. And it's not just state and local public health, it's also the federal government. You look at the CDC's budget, hasn't kept pace with inflation for the past 20 years, right? All of this, why? So that we could cut our public institutions to justify gigantic tax cuts for rich people and corporations who have gotten richer and richer and richer and have figured out ways to automate out or offshore our jobs. And case in point of that, right, is the fact that I want you to pay attention to something really unique that happened just a couple of weeks ago. We saw unemployment numbers at about 22 million unemployed. That is historic unemployment. And at the same time, on the day that was announced, the stock market rallied. What do you think about that? The stock market rallied on information that unemployment was at an all-time high. Never in American history has that ever happened. Why? Because we've now hit a point in our economy where corporations don't actually need people to be employed to do well. Why? Because they've been able to automate out jobs. And so all of that means that we economically, not only were we unable to put out the toaster fire of this pandemic when it was early, but economically, we are more vulnerable now than we have ever been, right? You think about rates of eviction, how expensive rent has gotten, homelessness. You think about access to healthy foods or even walkable environments. You think about the ability to transport yourself, given that we've decimated public transit, costs of automobiles and car insurance are going up and up and up for folks. You think about our economic system that has focused more on delivering capital for the richest rather than basic incomes for everyone else. You look at our political system, we have voter suppression that in fact is worse today than it was before 2008, and we all know why, right? You think about how all of these things come together and the confluence of a system that they create, it leaves us fundamentally and deeply insecure. And so that was the recognition I made that has profound implications for where we're suffering right now. We stripped away our ability to prevent this disease and in this pandemic, and people were more vulnerable to it than ever before. And you think about the epicenter of this pandemic. Where has it hit the worst? In communities like Detroit. Why? Because of decades of choices that have led to a level of insecurity and a level of concentrated poverty and an incapacity to provide basic public infrastructure and services on the part of the city and the state. And of course, Detroit was going to get hit hardest because it is the epicenter of all of the systems of insecurity that people face. And so here we are, and we're seeing the challenges. Now, there's a lot of discussion about quote unquote going back to normal, right? Everybody's like, well, when are we going to get back to normal? And I just want to say that that normal in the past, we all know, was not very normal for a lot of people, right? Today, we're talking about the fact that our healthcare system fundamentally failed when it came to being able to meet the challenges of this pandemic. But let's be clear, before this pandemic ever hit, it was equally bad that people would go without cancer diagnosis or cancer treatment, diabetes treatment, heart disease treatment before because they didn't have insurance, right? Whether it was COVID-19 or it was cancer, is still terrible. And in the past, right, before this pandemic, it was happening all the time. You think about this economy and the fact that we do have historic unemployment, and that's awful. But how many people were fundamentally locked out of the economy well before COVID-19 was even a word that we knew? You think about the challenge with housing. We know that people can't pay their rent now, but at the same time, evictions and homelessness were near an all-time high before this ever hit. And so the normal we have to pursue is not a normal we have known for the past 40 years. Normal we have to pursue is a normal where people are no longer locked out of the systems providing the basic means of a dignified life. Is that we've got to do the work as a society to articulate what it is that we need and what it is that we deserve. And that's a healthcare system that provides everybody access to healthcare free of charge at the point of care. That's a housing system that guarantees you access to the basic thing that you need to be able to provide yourself and your family shelter. That means reforming our economic system so that we're more focused on the well-being of people than on the well-being of corporations and CEOs. It means rethinking our political system so that everybody has a voice and the money of a very few doesn't dominate the will of the many. It means taking on an education system that has been stripped away of its basic parts and expanding it. Everybody should get every ounce of education anytime, anywhere, for any purpose. Because, of course, the one single thing that makes us human is the fact that we can think and we can engage. And knowledge is about the most human thing there is. And so why is it that we're not investing in humanity, or that we're putting it behind a paywall of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that has summed up to $1.5 trillion in collective student debt across our society? And we need to articulate a focus on a system of energy that doesn't ask us to take tar out of the ground and burn it into the lungs of our kids to provide ourselves energy. We have the sun, we have wind, we have clean energy resources that we could invest in if it weren't for the greed of a set of corporations who have made their money on the same thing for a long time, trying to protect their interests. And so we can move forward, but the question is how. Now, I shared with you that the story I wanted to tell was a hopeful one. I haven't talked very much about hope, but let me tell you where I think it is. As I campaigned, I came to appreciate that I was crossing between bounds that not very many people do. We are all having a set of conversations alone, usually with loved ones across a dinner table, about the challenges we face, about the ways that these corrupted systems that have been dominated by corporations are working against us. But we haven't necessarily shared them together. And in my book, I talk a little bit about this idea of an empathy politics. It's the idea that if we are able to not just look at the other and say, I disagree, but to be able to look at the other and ask, why do you say what you're saying in the first place? If we're able to recognize the way that this epidemic of insecurity is shaping the way that we think about our own lives, it forces us to then ask, well, can I put myself in that person's shoes and realize that, in fact, they're struggling with their own insecurity the same way that I'm struggling with mine? And what does it mean if we're all able to practice this kind of a politics, this kind of a political culture, where we step into the space that somebody else might occupy and recognize how their insecurity may be used against them by demagogues, the likes of Donald Trump, to be able to ask the relevant questions and empower a better politics that brings us together rather than tearing us apart. Can we actually take on those systems of insecurity that have left us vulnerable to this pandemic, that have stripped away the means of preventing it in the first place? And I think it is possible. I just think that it's going to take a rethinking of the way that we engage with our politics, and in a lot of ways, an embrace of a recognition that the challenges that we all face, we are bigger than, but the only way to face them is together, because, you know, indeed, you look at what happened in Lansing just today. There are a lot of people who are hurting, but are taking their hurt and using it to hurt others. And my question is, are we able to take our pain, our collective challenges, and turn it into something greater? I believe it is possible, but I do believe that it would take a lot of work. It's going to take a rethink of the way we transact our political conversations, we transact our cultural conversations, and a willingness to move beyond the hurtful things that people say and do, and ask why it is that they say and do them. Because I remember a colleague of mine once said something really profound, said, hurt people hurt people. So what is it that is the pain that is driving that violence? And can we start speaking to that and doing something about it? I really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts in space with you tonight. I'm wishing all of you safety and good health. I know that for many of you, this pandemic has struck in some profoundly deep and painful ways. And I'm deeply sorry about that. We should have done better, and we could have done better. My hope is that, you know, we can come together and do better in the future.
Wow. As usual, you've laid out a masterpiece of what we need to learn. And now I know I have to get your book. I haven't gotten it yet. But before we even begin, how do we purchase your book? Amazon?
You can go to healingpoliticsbook.com. You can get it on Amazon. But I do recommend that both Pages and Source in Detroit have it on offer. And I think Pages may be out of them, but I signed a bunch of copies for them. So if they still got them, they've got some signed copies. But Pages and the Source they're the places I would look to. They're all.
Hold on, you're frozen. Is everybody else frozen and I'm not? Oh boy. Hello, can anybody hear me?
To answer some of the issues that you highlighted, and specifically for you and your political future in terms of affecting some of the systems that you highlighted, to answer some of the inequities that Detroit it has and is facing currently.
Yeah, you know, it's a question I always, whenever it's always a hazard question. You know, for me, it's never been about the what or the what position. It's really, I've always tried to be about the why. And you know, I'll tell you about my why. My why is that I had the privilege of spending a lot of my summers back in Egypt, where both of my parents immigrated from. And my grandmother, wisest, most intelligent human being I've ever met in my life, never got to go to school. She was illiterate. But when I was there, she'd always remind me that there was nothing special about me. She'd point to one of my cousins and say, that one's smarter than you. Point to another one and say, that one's taller than you. Point to a third one and be like, that one's better looking than you. Point to a fourth one and be like, that one's smarter, taller, and better looking than you. And her whole point was that, you know, the thing that you have is an opportunity. You know, I would travel 15 hours to get to Egypt. And in those 15 hours, I traveled 10 years difference in life expectancy. I also grew up right outside Detroit. I could travel 25 minutes south on I-75 and travel the same 10-year life expectancy gap. So the facts of opportunity for me, and the facts of inopportunity for a lot of other folk, and the ways that those imprint themselves on people's bodies, those are my why. And so, you know, I think elected office might be a way to serve the why, but there are a lot of other ways too. And so if there's a good opportunity to serve and, that's the right way, then, perhaps then I'll run again. But if there are other ways to serve, then maybe I won't. But, my hope is that the why never changes, even if the what and the how may change with time. And, I think there's life is short, but it's also quite long. And I'm a father of a 2-year-old. And so, thinking a little bit about what it means to balance my responsibility as a dad and also public responsibilities are also something that I think a lot about. And so, it's a complex choice.
Okay, so we're going to take a break because we are so happy to be joined by Senator Stephanie Chang, who made it through. There were a couple hands up, and I want to make sure that we hear from those people who raised their hands before we move on. So if you raised your hands, please let me know what you need.
I'm going to go ahead and allow them to talk now. The first hand that's up is Danny Carl. Your hand's been up for a while. So we should be able to hear you now. Yeah, I think no.
Okay. All right, well, let's go to the second hand.
Okay. The second hand is from Samsung SNT3A.
And they are muted. So I'm going to
Yeah, you guys might have to unmute yourselves.
Just for context, your mute should be on the bottom left-hand corner there, and it should be a little microphone, and it's probably red. And if you unmute it, it'll be white and green.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go on because we are, wanting to make sure we get through this. But we want to introduce our friend and comrade in arms, State Senator Stephanie Chang. She is the first Asian American woman to be elected to the Michigan legislature. She worked as a community organizer, in Detroit for nearly a decade before serving 2 terms in the House of Representatives. She served as State Director for Next Gen Climate Michigan, Alumni Engagement and Evaluation Coordinator for the Center for Progressive Leadership in Michigan, Deputy Director for the Campaign for Justice, and as organizer for Michigan United, One United Michigan. She also worked as a Community Engagement Coordinator for the James and Grace Lee Boggs School and assistant to Grace Lee Boggs, an activist, writer, and speaker. The senator also is a co-founder and past president of Asian and Pacific Islander American Vote Michigan, and she served as a mentor with the Detroit Asian Youth Project. In the State House, Senator Chang led the way on air quality protection, education, criminal justice reforms, improving economic opportunities, and affordable, safe drinking water. She passed bipartisan legislation on a range of issues, including female genital mutilation, nitrous oxide whippets, reentry services for wrongfully convicted individuals who were exonerated, and more. She quickly earned her colleagues' respect and was named chair of the Progressive Women's Caucus in her second term. She also served on the leadership team for the House Democratic Caucus for both terms and was a co-founder of the Asian Pacific American Legislative Caucus. Chang earned her bachelor's degree in psychology and master's degree in public policy and social work from the University of Michigan. She lives in Detroit with her husband, Sean Gray, and 2 young daughters. And I just want to say before she speaks that there is no bias towards the University of Michigan. And I really can't explain why all 3 of our speakers this evening are alumni. With that, State Senator Chang. Okay, and you are muted, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So sorry for joining incredibly late. I am heading out from Lansing now, and I am glad that you all are here for this important meeting. And I know you've probably had some really, really important dialogue. And I want to thank ECN for all the amazing work that you do. I am so honored to be able to represent a huge portion of the East Side and to be able to partner with ECN on especially environmental justice issues, ensuring that fighting to ensure that residents have what they need in terms of community benefits related to the FCA expansion and so much more. I just really appreciate the organization for all of your leadership and advocacy, especially during times like this. I think all of you may know that in Lansing today, the majority party in both chambers decided that they wanted to push forward to potentially sue the governor if she extends the state of emergency, which we know that she, intends to do, in order to save lives and protect public health and to protect workers and put in place protections for people. So it's a hard day. I think some of you may have seen images of some of the so-called protesters, at the Capitol today. So it's obviously disappointing to know that some folks are acting without the best interest of public health. And so I think it's so important that people are engaged, in as many ways as you can right now, because in 2020, there's just so much at stake. And I think that whether it's involvement with ECN or in your neighborhood or on critical issues that you care about, speaking up about injustices and advocating for real solutions, which unfortunately we didn't pass anything that moves anything forward in a positive way today. But I am just happy to be here and hopefully to be able to help answer any questions. But just thank you for being part of good things moving forward. I know that it's a really, really challenging time right now, but we're going to get through this together.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We have a couple of speakers here, and I do want to kick off a question because it's been on my mind. There's so many things that are wrong with what's happening in the world right now. But the interesting thing is that in very short order, we found a way to reconnect everybody's water, to stop DTE shutoffs, to stop evictions, to freeze mortgages, and to actually pay people the equivalent of $15 an hour in unemployment benefits. So we have entered into this phase where all of a sudden the impossible seems possible, and Santa Claus no longer seems like an imagination and is no longer thrown in our faces. And, there is that old adage, never let a crisis, go to waste. So how can we avoid wasting this crisis and everything that has occurred as a result of actually the fear that people have that everything will fall apart, that have motivated them to start trying to do some things? Anybody who wants to answer that, please jump in. But we'll start with you, Senator Chang, because you just got back from, the Capitol. You're still there.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that question because I think you're absolutely right. That's one of the silver linings out of this really terrible, crisis and pandemic that we're in, where we've lost far too many of our friends and neighbors, is that we're seeing progressive solutions and putting equity at the forefront. Things that people have been pushing for years, finally getting done, but these are temporary. And so addressing water shutoffs, addressing non-discrimination in healthcare, addressing rent, addressing foreclosures, all of these things, I'm really proud of so many of the actions that our governor has taken, and solutions that we've seen at the federal level as well. But these are all things that we need to really a paid sick leave. I mean, all of these things we need to put in place and on a more permanent basis. And so I think that all of these issues are things that I hope people will continue advocating for, because ultimately I think that we're seeing in this crisis that these are things that work. These are things that we need, but not just for now. We need them forever. Access to healthcare, of course, all of these, I think the list is so long, and I'm probably missing, a half a dozen major issues here, but I think you're absolutely right. And I think that this pandemic has really just laid bare so many of the inequities in our community, but also so many of the solutions that can be possible and that can work. So, know that legislators, and not just myself but many others, are working on bills to put some of these solutions into place for good. But we have to continue to mobilize and also really make sure that that there's political will on both sides of the aisle to get these things done. But I agree wholeheartedly, and we're going to keep up the fight.
Before we, it looks like Abdul's about to jump in, but before you jump in, anybody who has questions, you can type it in the chat bar and we'll read it if we're unable to catch your hand. Abdul?
Yeah, well, I appreciate Senator Chang's leadership. I think one of the things that is so frustrating about watching this happen is that it's too late. Right? I mean, we should have had all these things well earlier. Waiting until the middle of a pandemic to respond to the pandemic is missing the point that this is about prevention. And so I do think that we have a responsibility not just to, to sort of meet this where it is, but to call out the absurdity of realizing that all of the excuses that were being made, certainly by the GOP, but also by many Democrats, about why we couldn't do you name the thing, are BS. They always have been, and we have a responsibility to recognize that they have always been, they are, and they will be useless, not true, and just unfair excuses that are used often to balance between the interests of poor and working people and the interests of corporations and the rich. And so I just think, I appreciate the leadership in this moment to try and make up for the fact that we've ever had these things. And certainly Senator Chang has been fighting for these things for a long, long time. And so I'm not calling out any one individual, but I am saying that there is a sense sometimes among Democrats that, we have to be quote unquote reasonable. It's not unreasonable to ask that everybody in America have healthcare. It's not unreasonable to ask that people have housing. It's not unreasonable to ask people can work a job and earn a living wage. I mean, it's almost a smack in the face right now to think that a lot of these folks who earn $10, $11, $12 an hour, we're calling quote unquote essential workers, when really what we're saying is you're expendable and you weren't essential before because we couldn't even pay you $15. And so I just think we've got to take this moment and say, look, it's amazing how all of the excuses fell away when you saw a need, but there's always been a need, even if you may not have seen it. And so we've got to continue to put our foot down and advocate for this in a way that speaks to the fact that just because it happened now is not enough. This is not a moment where these things all of a sudden we have an emergency and we have to react. They were emergencies before; they just weren't collective emergencies. And if we ever want to prevent this from happening again, then we ought to be ready. And we need to be thinking about these policies as prevention, not just cure.
It's okay. It seems as though once people get a taste of something, and once people see that, wait a minute, these things can happen, and can happen very quickly when there is political will, it makes it a lot harder to put the genie back in the bottle. The genie's out now, isn't he? And doesn't that mean something for our political future? Do you believe more people will be demanding equity at the political table based on these things? I'm going to ask that and pose that to the Honorable Joanne Watson. Okay.
I also think people need. I also think people need. I think people need to run for office. I don't think we ought to be leaving it up to those who hear a little bird in their own head telling them to run. There ought to be key people from great organizations, the Eastside Community Network, who are primed for public service. What better place to be a proving ground for leadership and public policymakers than an organization like the Eastside Community Network? I think we should not leave it up to people who have decided they want to be in office, but we should put people in office who have already done something, who have already served, who have proven themselves to not sell out, who have proven themselves to be people who won't get in the office and take pork chops, who have proven them, help me, Holy Ghost, who have proven themselves to be connected to the very issues we prioritize. So that you shouldn't have to convince somebody in public office to take care of the hungry, to take care of the homeless, to take care of those who are without water. They should have done something before they got elected. And that's why we need to better craft our support for public officials. We ought to be announcing who we want. We ought to put together a slate of folks we know who will serve us well because they've already served us well before they were elected. And I think the limits of tyrants is determined by the tolerance of those whom they oppress, said Frederick Douglass. The power conceives nothing without a demand. It never has and never will. So we shouldn't wait for people to get it. This business of thinking we're supposed to somehow make it off $1,200 stimulus check. In Canada, they get $2,000 a month stimulus, $2,000 a month, plus free health care. We settle for too little, too late. We should make a demand. We should organize, and we should put our own people in public office.
Well, I hear you. So that's one of the things that we're looking at Eastside Votes, trying to figure out how to promote public service inside of our community and get people out there. I also think that it's important for us to develop a platform of what we want to see happen, our own agenda, and not leave our agenda up to the whims of other people. We know
That's
what
right.
we want and we know what we need. And if you're running for office inside of our communities, can we make a demand on you that you act on that? Is the question.
That's
right. With that, I really, really want to appreciate all of you. I don't know if there's time for one more question. If anybody has, oh, here's one. How can organizations like ECN be a catalyst for rebounding in communities that had struggles that are even greater now and even more fractured and discouraged? And this comes from our board member, Miguel Pope. So, all panelists. How can we be a catalyst for rebounding?
Start from right where you are. Start from right. This is a great launching pad this evening to say let's not just talk about it. Let's organize and make change and transform our beloved community into the community we want it to be. Let's have a whole cauldron of people who are committed to putting their money together to own some businesses in our community. Let's put our thoughts and leadership together to have people run for not just one office, but a variety of offices. And let's put our networks together so that a slate of demands for things that we absolutely believe will be the quality of life that's acceptable for us, that becomes our standard, a new normal.
Okay, awesome.
I agree with Ms. Joanne. I think, the point that she made earlier is that, we're here in quarantine. This is a perfect time to be organizing, and ask yourself what the world needs to be based on what it has been, what is right now, and what's missing. And the last thing I'll just say is that I think sometimes we're taught not to believe in the power of our own voice or the power of our impact. And I think when they stop you from trying, and they convince you that you're too small to try, that's when they win. And I just hope that, folks leave this recognizing that everybody on this call has extremely powerful voice, that we need to hear it, and that we have a responsibility to building the kind of future where something like this doesn't happen again and people in our communities aren't so vulnerable to it. So really appreciate you creating this space and the opportunity to spend an evening with you, and hope that, we get to meet in person in better times.
Absolutely. Senator Chang, did you have some closing words?
Sure. I will echo Abdul in just saying I really believe and people's stories are so powerful. And, you know, especially in a time where you know, there's just a lot of fear and fear mongering and people saying all types of stuff that aren't true. And I mean, I sort of mentioned this earlier, just how this pandemic has really shown so many of the inequities. Part of the problem that I see in the legislature is when I have colleagues that just live in communities that are facing completely different realities, and I think they just literally don't know what is going on in communities like Detroit, and especially on the east side of Detroit. So I think, but you can't deny someone their story. You can't deny someone their own experience. And so I really think that one of the amazing, important things that groups like ECN can do, and you know, has already been doing, is really amplifying the voices and the stories of people and what people are going through, the loss people have experienced, but also the amazing things that people are doing to help one another right now. I think that is just really important right now, because, you know, when you have people living just completely different realities based on whether or not they've lost a loved one, or whether or not they can sit at home and work from home, versus, you know, so many, especially in Detroit, and especially people of color who are forced to go to work because of the type of work that they do. I mean, people are living completely different realities, and you can't deny someone their lived experience. And so I think that is why telling our stories now is so much even more important than it always has been. So I think that in terms of ECN being a catalyst, is to continue to be able to help amplify people's voices and help organize the way that ECN has already been doing, and especially among young people, because I think young people are watching what's going on, or experiencing what's going on, and have important ideas to share about how we can do better. So I just want to thank ECN for hosting this, and thank you to Abdul and Joanne Watson for being a part of this. And again, I apologize that I wasn't able to be here for the whole thing, but I'm just looking forward to always being an ally to this organization and helping however I can.
You know what time it is? It's Orlando Bailey time, and Orlando has a message to help bring it all together, okay? Because I was just thinking that song, No Romance Without Finance, but I don't think that's what this means. Orlando, can you take us there?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having me. Shout out to Donna and all of the Eastside Community Network staff. It is a small but dynamic team. And hats off to all of the guest speakers tonight, Reverend Joanne Watson, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, and Senator Stephanie Chang. My task is easy tonight. As you all know, I've moved on from ECN, but I have not moved on from ECN. ECN has my heart, and I'll always do whatever I can to help. So the Eastside Community Network has launched Keep the Eastside Safe campaign, and as Deputy Director Angela Wilson mentioned earlier, Eastside Community Network staff has been out in the community delivering care kits to Eastsiders who sign up to receive care kits. We know that it is a tumultuous time for a lot of people economically, as well as traumatically, losing folks at this time, folks falling ill, and just needing a leg up and a helping hand. Eastside Community Network, in true form, has vowed to answer the call without any specified funding to answer the call. So there was no funding to create this campaign. There was no funding for gas or anything like that for our Eastside Community Network staff to deliver these care kits. So what we know about the Eastside is, number one, that we're resilient, and number two is that we are giving and philanthropic. There is no way an organization like Eastside Community Network can survive 36 years through economic recession, ups and downs in the economy and in city government, municipal changes, state and regional changes, without the generous support of all of you. And so I want to make sure that I offer to those who can and will an opportunity to pledge support for the Keep the Eastside Safe campaign while ECN is delivering care kits to the community. You can pledge any amount. We want you to go to www.ecn-detroit, and you can click on the donate button there, and you can donate there. Also, there is a Moved Up Giving Tuesday campaign happening on May 5th, Tuesday. So you can also run and support the fundraiser on Facebook for Giving Tuesday for our East Side, Keep the East Side Safe campaign this upcoming Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. But within the comments now, if you want to pledge support, we want to see you, and we want to see the amount that you will pledge. So if you plan on pledging, if you want to right now, you can put your pledge amount of any amount in the comments. Our Eastside Community Network staff will be sure to follow up with you, but we want to provide an opportunity for you to give right now. We know that a lot of folks are struggling, but some of us are doing okay. And some of us have the extra little income, no matter how small or big, to give to a rooted organization like Eastside Community Network. So if you can and will, we're going to take a few minutes. I would love for you on Facebook and in our chat right now in the Zoom platform to put your pledge amount, and we will make sure that Eastside Community Network staff will contact you. So I want to call out some of the pledges. Thank you, Ebony Taylor, a board member who pledges $50. Angela Wilson, thank you for $50. Savannah Brewer, thank you for your $100. Hank Hubbard, a board member, we thank you for your $100. ECN's president and CEO, Donna, thank you for your $50. Dr. El-Sayed, thank you for your $300. So as we continue to create and make positive impact on the Detroit's East Side, we thank you so much for your support. I see $25. Greg Donnelly, thank you for your $100. Loretta Powell, who is a committed volunteer over at Eastside Community Network, who started a garden club that already has 35 members. Thank you for your $20. Thank you, board member Robert Young, for your $200. Nicole, we thank you. That's my sister at Detroit Future City, for your $100. State Senator Stephanie Chang, even while don't text and drive, Senator Chang, but we thank you for your $100. Brenda Butler, we thank you for your $25. Everybody who's giving right now and who's making pledges, we are making note of it. The Eastside Community Network staff and finance department will follow up with you, or you can make good on your pledge by going to www.ecn-detroit.org, or we have Cash App. You can $ECN Detroit. So if you have the Cash App, $ECN Detroit to make good on your pledge, go to ecn-detroit.org and click the donate button. You can donate there, or we will make sure that ECN staff follows up with your pledge. Thank you all so much. Dylan, we see your $50. Thank you. And I am pledging $100. Thank you.
And Charles, I think, was missed. He pledged $50. This means the world to all of us. Thank you so much, Orlando. Nobody does it like you. I want to thank, first of all, the ECN staff, who I think everybody can see are simply amazing. The work that you do, every time I hear all of it at one time, I'm like, wow, we're doing all of that. And because there's always something new, even I learn about the work that you're doing. And that's because I want to say there are people here at ECN, nobody's not working. Nobody has to work. There's nobody punching a time clock. People are doing this because of their commitment. And I am so honored to lead an organization with staff who are that committed. I want to thank Camille Johnson, who stepped in and coordinated all of this in a very short period of time and did an excellent job of trying to keep everything in place. I want to thank our board members, starting with our board chair, Charles Walker, but all of the other board members, including those of you who stepped up and re-upped. And I want to thank allies who are powerful people doing powerful things, who come to us when we ask. Honorable Joanne Watson, Dr. El-Sayed, and State Senator Stephanie Chang, we would not be who we are without you. I think I see Maggie over there. She's hiding under somebody else's name. Is that you, Maggie? Raise your hand. Maybe not. So I do want to thank all of you for the work that you do. I thought I saw Maggie. If so, I want to thank her for being a wonderful founder of this organization. Thank everybody for tuning in and listening tonight. And we will be in touch. So we have an annual report we'll be sending out to everybody who registered, and you can contact us anytime you would like. Thank you. And it is 7:59. We end on time online. Have a great
job, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Great job.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Great work.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
job, everybody.